Hey, podcaster. I'm Tim Wahlberg, your podcast performance coach, with another actionable tip so you can grow your podcast authority, generate leads, and convert with ease. Today's tip is set yourself up for podcast success by learning from my past clients. This is a milestone episode for this show. We are 200 episodes old. It's taken me almost 7 years to get here. I know it's a long time, right? But some people hit this milestone much earlier, but I knew that creating an episode every other week was going to be sustainable in the long term. I also knew that this consistency would be the key to this podcast playing a major role in my success, and it has. So thank you for listening, and to all of you who have booked a call as a result of listening, even if you didn't become a client, I have enjoyed meeting each and every one of you, for the exception of, and you know why. Just kidding. I love you all, and I appreciate your support of this show. But enough about me. Let's talk about how all of these years of experience can help you turn your podcast into a marketing machine for your business, because that's what I love doing for podcasters like you. In this episode, I want to share some insights from the amazing clients I have the opportunity to work with. I get to see everything they are doing with their shows and can clearly see what's working right now to help them move the needle in their businesses. So here are 5 things that entrepreneurs are doing right now with their podcast. Number 1, they have a business. Now, this might seem like an obvious thing, but I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs who want to make their podcast their business, and this can work. But what I see best is when entrepreneurs who already have an established business use podcasting as a way to drive interest and traffic to that business. But the most successful are also super clear on their business. The clients who sign up for our Concept to Casting or Podcast Tune-Up program are always a bit surprised that this is where we start, but it's crucial. In order for your podcast to serve your business, you need to have a clear idea of the problem that you solve and who you solve it for. This clarity around your target audience will really help you niche, and niching has been the fuel to the fire for many of my clients' podcasts. You also want to make sure that this brand clarity is obvious in your podcast. I'm talking about your podcast's name, artwork, website, pages, episode topic titles. Everything you do with your podcast should feel like it belongs to your business. Your listeners need to see the relationship between your podcast and your business. So be clear about your business and brand and connect the dots to your podcast. The second thing that is working for my clients is having a rock solid intention around their podcast. Not one of my clients would dare to say that the intention of their podcast is to get as many downloads as possible. The intention cannot be just that you are the most popular kid at school. What do those downloads mean to you? Why do you want them? There has to be more to you than just downloads if you want your podcast to serve you and your business. Figure out what your intention is and then start to measure it using related KPIs, key performance indicators. Be sure to track them and have goals using those same KPIs. Now, don't feel bad if you've been chasing those download numbers. It is the most common thing I hear when I ask people during my free coaching calls about why they want to start a podcast or why they have a podcast. I shared more about this in episode 177, the most important question to ask about your podcast goals. And in episode 51, are you focusing on the wrong podcast stats? But I want to mention it here because it is hands down one of the most important shifts that a podcaster can make when their podcast is meant to be a marketing tool for their business. So, number 2, intention. Number 3 on my list of things that are working now is a continuation of tip 1 and 2. Once your podcast is aligned with your business and you know what you want your podcast to do for your business, you need a system. So tip 3 is to have a funnel and know exactly the role that your podcast plays in your funnel's success. Your listener journey can be the same as your customer journey if you are clear with your listener about what the next step is. So get that funnel functioning and use your podcast to make it effective. Okay, on to tip number 4 about what's working. This is a huge one. My most successful clients know that their podcast does not stand alone. They know that the podcast is part of a marketing ecosystem, not the entire strategy. This can be hard for some entrepreneurs to hear because podcasting can be time consuming, and it would be nice to just do this one thing and call it a day. Sorry, doesn't work like that. To get the most out of your podcast as a marketing tool, you need to market it and you need to leverage it. Every podcast is different, so your strategy will be too, but my most successful clients use their podcast to drive people to their social channels, their website, their newsletter, and vice versa. Everything works together to build that relationship with your listener and boost your authority as an expert. If you want to be known for something, then a podcast is a great way to do that, but you have to make sure people know about your show. And part of that ecosystem is also going to include outreach. Find new places to talk about and share your podcast with new audiences. That might be getting on other people's podcasts, speaking on stage, guest blogging, or even getting mentions in traditional media, like being interviewed for a magazine, newspaper, or a television show about your expertise or podcast. Really? I gotta do all that? Yes, it does take some hustle to make your podcast a marketing machine. And that brings me to tip number 5, my final observation of what my clients are doing to make their podcast an amazing marketing tool for their business is to not try to go it alone. Get support. There are so many different ways you can take the load off yourself a little. You can hire an editor, a social media manager, a podcast producer or manager, an outreach expert, a VA. There are countless people out there eager to help you make your show a success. Oh, and how could I forget? You can also hire a podcast coach like me to make sure that your show is aligned with your business and good enough to deserve all the attention you're going to be giving it. And take advantage of some of the podcast tools already available to you. Often, these are already free through your podcast publishing host. For example, you could be using Headliner to create social media posts, auto-publishing to socials, using automated transcription tools to make show notes easier, promoting your show or doing a promo exchange, using dynamic ads, or diving into the world of AI content generation to leverage each episode. Heck, you can add someone to your team to just do all of these things. But if you can't afford to build out a whole podcast team, focus on getting support on the things that take you the most time or give you the most grief. One thing I've seen time and again with my clients is that when they hand over the small tasks, they can focus on the big picture, and it leads to big things with the podcast and their business. I hope you can apply these insights to your podcast right away, because these are the 5 things that I see my clients doing. And frankly, they're killing it. So if you want your podcast to actually be a marketing tool, then 1, get clear on who you serve and how you serve them. Number 2, determine the intention of your podcast as it relates to your business. 3, have a funnel and know how the podcast will feed it. Number 4, create a marketing ecosystem around your podcast. And number 5, get support so you can grow your podcast faster, because it's now aligned with your business, and podcast growth means business growth. And I hope that's just the tip you need. Do you want to be one of the clients I brag about 100 episodes from now? It starts with a free podcast coaching call. Let's check in on these 5 areas and see how you're doing. Are there holes? Can we fill those holes? Book your free podcast coaching call by using the link in the show notes or at podcastperformancecoach.com. I'm Tim Walberg. See ya.